You feel like you got a voice, feel like you got something to say? Feel like you have something that can move the masses or get everybody tuned in and you want a bigger audience? Whether it can be anything from something like the God Hour or anything from like sports, news, fashion week, whatever it may be. Let me put you on to something. The easiest way to do it is with the Anchor app. Biggest thing about it is free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will even do all of the distribution for your podcast for you so it can be heard on many other platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money. You also can make money from your podcast with a minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. It's everything you need to get your voice heard and get what you feel that's in your heart and enter to your heart out to the masses. If you're interested, download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
Grand Rise, gods and goddesses, titans, celestials, kings, queens, neophytes, adepts, occultists, alchemists, brujas, wizards, shamans, healers, oracles, whatever you are at this moment in time, remember today is the only day that matters. Remember, you are the only one that matters. Welcome to the God Hour podcast. It's your host, your master of ceremonies, your spiritual advisor, Papa Lucifer. And this is season 3. We're wrapping up season 3 pretty soon. This is episode 40, Terraforming. Most times when we are creating, we create on this to sustain the attachments because we're existing in the now. So if we're existing in the now, that means we're living in those past thoughts. We're living in those traumas. We're living in those emotional stunts. This space that we're coming into now, so if we're existing based on that, that means within the illusion, those old behaviors, those old patterns, that's what is existing in that illusion. So we're acting out and reacting. It's time to switch that and get into our understanding how to form outside of the terror. How to rise to our highest aspects of ourselves, understanding the disconnect. And that requires more shadow work. We got into the detoxing. We got into the diet. Last week we got into breaking down those walls. And now that we broke down those walls, this week we gonna get into terraforming. Burning down those bridges of attachment. Understanding the aspect of slavery versus mastery. And then we're going to get into the living in the now. But before that, we're going to get into this God Hour, God Thought, followed by the reading. Welcome to the God Hour. Let's get into this week's God Thought, shall we? In order to stop forming out of terror, we must realize the formula of living in the past only creates the existing in the state of the reaction in the now. This is what I call terraforming, or the aspect that is the state of unity in the illusion of humanity. Logging and attracting to survive. It's time for us to shift into the savage rise of the true Naga. True nigga. Real nigga type shit. So when we think about the aspect of terraforming, think about the bonds that you have created over this period of time. Think about the aspects in your life, and are they based on keeping you in a state of constriction so you only feel like to go to an escape just to come back? Or are you doing it based on expansion? Expansion is the aspect of living in the now. Being able to sit in this moment and take those moments of self-reflection, take those moments of self-evaluation, and putting yourself into a space where you are gaining transparency and clarity. That's where that honesty is going to be that key. A lot of these things are based in that existing. The old behavior patterns, the old mentalities, then you simply only exist to react to things that further stimulate those old patterns and those old mentalities. That's what I think about when I truly think about the aspects of terraforming. Forming your bonds that are based on trauma. Trying to survive based on the trauma, trying to thrive, and then we end up having the need to always escape. We have the need to always want to have more because you're only sustaining an illusion. Think about the same thing with the thought process of as fast as you get it, it's as fast as you spend it. It's because you haven't mastered it. So you're used to being a slave to the urge. You're used to only existing in the now. The fear of burning down those bridges that no longer serve purpose. Because you allowed the walls to fall down, now we gotta discuss those bridges. But we're gonna get more into this right after we get into this week's reading. Welcome to the G.O.D podcast. Let's get into the weekly reading. Get the card shuffled up. Alright, first card we got pulled out for the day. This week's reading. Page of Wands. Second card we got pulled out is the Ace of Swords. Third card we're gonna pull, Two of Pentacles. Fourth card, the Nine of Wands. And the fifth card for this week's reading, Three of Swords. Let's get into this reading, y'all. I love when I see the Page of Wands. The Page of Wands represents the aspects of inspiration, ideas, discovery, limitless potential, and freeing your spirit, or that free spirit aspect. It's time to, as I'm looking at it, it's time to embrace opening up to the new journey and possibilities. You may have been experiencing a sort of restlessness, especially because of the retrogrades. You may have been experiencing that restlessness. Your sleep patterns off. You're sleeping less. Your old cycles are starting to fall away. Look at the symbolism of the Page of Wands. It's standing firm. This is your current position. You have made choices that are for the betterment of the intimate power of you. This is a time for grounding your energy into the reality of desire, of what you're desiring. Mapping out to your new compass. Understanding the polarities to ground in the transparency of the middle point. As the fuel that's what's going to serve this is going to be the things that no longer serve you. That's going to ignite that fire and rise you into that highest aspect of yourself. This will help you create and fulfill that spectrum for that clarity. It's going to help broaden your view for that clarity. This is what a lot of us are needing right now. And for that alignment to your goals. This leads to the aspects of the Ace of Swords. The Ace of Swords represents breakthroughs, new ideas, mental clarity, and success. This will bring that ability to focus on that new wave of energy represented in the Ace of Swords. This card represents the aspects of expansion mode. You should be in an expanding mode, not in a constricting mode. The old way of thinking, the thing that's going to leave you restless is that old way of thinking. Because you're trying to apply that old energy, this new wave of energy to that new things that were constricting you. Ain't gonna work no more. Breakthroughs in your shadow work will give you a much needed clearer view of the entire world and the entire spectrum. The not as so much sudden, but rather now you are embracing that path ahead of you. That's what's becoming clearer. Use this time to meditate. Use this time to clear away that mental chatter. The new possibilities to use your intimate power of yourself that's in that page of Wands is empowered by pursuing new opportunities that draw upon that channeling the energy, and this will aid you in creating and destroying. Because Ace of Swords is about the aspects it swings. This is a the two-edged sword. With one side that you are going to create, the other side you're going to destroy. You got to get comfortable with that. With that great power that you now have, that you're taking the responsibility in, that's what's going to be based on your healing and not continuing to create this existing within the trauma. And this is perfect because right in that spread after that's explaining the Two of Pentacles. The Two of Pentacles represents the multiple priorities, your time management, that procrastination that's coming up, and your adaptability. Represented clearly in the Two of Pentacles, meaning your time and prioritizing of your growth. You're learning how to prioritize what is needed for your growth. A lot of times when we come into this space, we're looking like, I don't want to do that, because we think about, our ego has us thinking, when I get everything else outside of me in order, then I can work on me. Not realizing that if everything outside of me is a reflection of me, that means the longer that I stay out of order, those things stay out of order. Don't be afraid to maintain the expenses that are going to be needed to adapt from what you've learned thus far. What you've learned at this point in time is going to help you balance. The things that are coming up as you're kicking up that dust that I talked about in the chariot the other week. That dust that's kicking up. Everything's settling. It's showing you your new boundaries. It's showing you a new place. Do not be afraid of expanding. This is the time of your expansion. This is the time to embrace that chaos. That chaos is going to be your creator to help you do your creation. You have to bring balance. This is what's truly needed. This will aid in the not continuing the usual overcommitments that you become accustomed to. A lot of times we come into this space, we got accustomed to reacting. Now it's time to become accustomed to being proactive. That means I know when my rent is due. I know when my electric bill is due. I know when I know when the internet bill is due. I know when these things are due. So instead of me reacting like, oh my God, it's due again, or oh my God, I gotta get a new shoe, or oh my God, this is my chance to actually start understanding how am I really balancing out my life now that I'm in the now, I'm living in the now, I'm not existing in it anymore. So those old mentalities and the old behaviors don't work here because I'm not existing in reaction. I'm going into my productivity. This is going to be brought up in the Nine of Swords. The Nine of Swords represents anxiety, worry, fear, depression, and nightmares. As I flip it over, the Nine of Swords shows that the need to embrace the new inspiration to expand and bring balance to the understanding of what's been weighing you down. You see, the more you associate with the fears, the more they rule your life. Living in the past makes us only existing in the now, leaving you in reaction and creating a circle of repeats, only creating the worst case scenarios in your mind. A lot of us fall into that space a lot of the times. For fear of expanding, we stay connected to something that we know, rather than moving into the unknown, not understanding that only in the unknown can we create. You can't create nothing in the past. You only can create within the unknown. The chaos of the past is your fuel to create in the unknown, whatever you want. Challenge yourself. This is the aspect of living in those pasts only makes the existing in the now. Only creating those worst case scenarios. The Nine of Swords asks us to acknowledge the cycle and break the pattern. Instead of questioning for evidence, because a lot of us, not only do the queens do that, but y'all do the same shit. Y'all, like, we do this in that pro-black thing. We're gonna get into that this week. We get into it when we're trying to stay a slave to the urge, a slave to the mentality and the behavior pattern that was created based on the trauma instead of learning. So we don't become open, we stay rigid, we stay closed. It's crazy when you hear, when you're saying something about somebody or taking judgment to somebody, take that moment, step back and be like, what about myself is resonating? Why am I being triggered? This is going to be using this time to focus on questioning for understanding. This gets us into the last card of this spread, the Three of Swords. This aspect means for emotional pain, grief, hurt, and releasing pain. The Three of Swords represents the symbols of the patterns. It represents the seeing these symbols of those patterns to break those cycles that are within that Nine of Swords coming out. It is an essential to not allow the old constraints to constrict you. It is time to grow and expand using the old as the weight to break down those restraints. That's going to be the major key. Embrace the release to create connections and break the attachments. Embrace the releasing to create connections and break the attachments. This will allow us to help cut away from the projecting from the trigger and shifting into the understanding why those words or those actions triggered me in the first place. Use the pain to build the boundaries and give clarity to the bigger picture. This becomes an aspect when I'm looking at it, as I looked at these cards, I'm going to go back and forth on these cards. When I'm looking and I'm taking to myself into the day, I'm in a state of, it's the key of me seeing the Page of Wands makes me understand that, yo, I'm in a new space. I'm standing firm. I've cut things away. Now that I've cut these things away, what am I doing next? As I've removed these things out of my way and I've made these choices, that standing firm in my choices, the new opportunities that are coming up are going to be encouraged by me further cutting away when I look at the Ace of Swords, when I see the Ace of Swords. This spread got 3 swords in it. That means it's time, this is a cutaway. This is a cutaway spread for clarity. So when I look at how I'm balancing my things out, my Two of Pentacles, how am I balancing out my energy? How am I putting myself in a place where I'm healing? How am I constantly healing myself? How am I activating my healing? Because remember, everything that you need is already within you. So basically, it's how you're activating it. So when I think about healing, I'm thinking about the aspects of understanding the pain triggers the healing process. Suffering only hinders the healing process. So every time that I get up, it's like, how am I going to set forth and make the impact to heal the day? How am I going to use my story in the aspect as a solution for someone? This is what you're doing for it as you're learning how to balance yourself in that new space. This is going to help you when you're looking at that Nine of Swords and all of those things that used to, the patterns, and recognizing those patterns. Because the patterns come up as you start healing yourself. Think about when you go to the gym and then you're realizing that you're hungry. But now that you're going to the gym, you've already sweated out all the old things. Or you went into a detox, you already got rid of all the old. Now that you're hungrier, what are you hungry for? Am I hungry am I hungry to feed my emotion, or am I going to feed my genius? My genius is simply my will to want to do more and want to get higher. To maintain, not to get higher, but to create the balance so I can be higher. That's required in that Three of Swords. That Three of Swords teaches me I want to separate from this. I need to separate from this. I need to cut away from this. This is no longer serving me. This is no longer serving me based on my decisions, based on me creating, based on me destroying, based on me finding my new balance, based on me acknowledging these things and not falling into the pattern of creating or sustaining my existing in the current state. This is how you rise. This is how we grow. This is how we show ourselves. If it resonates with you, allow the message to take you further. If it resonates you and you need more clarity, you know you can hit me up tonight. You know we do the God Hour show, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or you can hit me in the inbox of Rockhold and Aegis, or stay tuned for the Plug Talk for all the links to get in contact with me to aid you in getting you to an alignment. Stay tuned after this break. We're gonna get into the God Hour podcast. Welcome, 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 welcome. Blessed be to the day. May it be everything you require to create everything you desire. I'll see y'all in a little bit. Ashe. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another episode of the God Hour podcast. It's Papa Lucifer, your master of ceremonies, your spiritual advisor. And, you know, this week we getting into terraforming. I thought about terraforming when I was restudying on the aspect of terraforming. And I always like to take these words, these definitions, these topics, and expanding them past the parameters of our normal way of thinking, taking us out of the brain and stepping us into our mind. And the first part of this session that we're going to be getting into, grab the wrong notebook. The first part that we're getting into in this week's session is burning down those bridges of attachment. That's one of the biggest keys. Burning down those bridges, breaking down those walls, like when we got into breaking down those walls last week, exposes the attachments. This is one of the key aspects when it comes to understanding the development process. Our go-tos for escape and the scapegoats created are actually needed to learn from. We need to learn from these aspects. See, when we're in this space of living, when we're rather existing, because if you ain't dealt with the trauma, if you have not dealt with the traumas, I can honestly say I don't really care how far you think how good your external life is. Because your external state is based on existing. And when you really start breaking down, I like where that switch. When you really start breaking down why you can't seem to keep that job, why you can't seem to keep long-lasting friendships, relationships, and the ones that you are keeping, you're basing on longevity. One of the things that I always think about when I think about longevity is you can meet somebody tomorrow or right now. We'll say tomorrow for this case. You can meet someone tomorrow that has more, that is suitable to serve the challenge in rising you to your higher self than someone that you've known for like 10, 15 years. And that's real shit. Because we have to just understand that there's attachment and connection. Building that resistance, building that connection or that attachment. That attachment is building up a resistance to what is in actuality the very needed chaos to create. With terraforming, usually the bridges are built to survive. Living in our thoughts and rationalizing the negative that leads to the mindsets and the survival patterns. A lot of times we form bonds with individuals, we form bonds with jobs, we form these bonds and they're based upon trauma. So then when that bridge gets burned and we don't know where we're like, that bridge gets burned, that bridge been burning. Every argument, every time that your boundary has been tested, every time that you allowed yourself to be a slave to your emotion, these are the fuels, these are the aspects of the fuel or the conduits of the fuel that are burning down that bridge. Then you go back over and you want to rebuild this bridge. There's a reason that bridge keeps burning. But you have to step out of the existing and step into the living. A lot of us don't really want to live. Living requires expanding. One thing that I remember I was glad that I was able to do in my earlier parts of my life, in the 20s of my life, was I was able to actually travel and go places. I was glad for the aspect of travel because it gave me at that time an unconscious ability to really be like, you know what? I'm in a space, nobody knows me. How will I create myself? In this space, no safety net. I remember one thing in my shadow work for me when I was 19. When I was 19, I was just getting out of the year in 6. I've talked about that before. And I moved to Tennessee. It was a new start. I got up with my now ex, and she was my first fiance. But I remember I met her in high school, and we got back in contact after I came back down here. And I remember that at the point in time that when I left, that was the main thing that I had to realize. The reason that I left and was so eager to go there was it was actually an escape. This becomes the biggest aspect of it. It was actually an escape for me. Like, I was actually escaping from dealing with family members. I was escaping from really establishing roots or dealing with the roots of my issues, the things that I needed to deal with. So when I was in that space, I was trying everything in my power to keep it going. And when you do this, living in the past, you're living in the thoughts. So you're living in your past, you're living in the thoughts. Living in your past, living in those thoughts. We understand that our traumas and the things that we have been through in that aspect, these things are the narrative or the key points that create the mentalities and the behavioral patterns that we move forward with. So if I'm living in the past, that means I've not released myself, I've not released or forgiven myself or came into understanding of my past. That means I'm only existing in this present state based on those mentalities and those behavioral patterns. Not saying that the behavior patterns and the mentalities are negative or positive, but where are they streaming from? This creates the human thought process of the human narrative. Remember, when you came down here with that crutch of the handicap being your identity. Bobby Hemmitt always talked about the doppelganger. Your doppelganger, your double, your other aspect of yourself, your light. You came down here with your light. You came down here with a shadow, really. So when you started going through the work of cultivating that light that you were in that space, through those traumas, through everything that happened in your childhood, all these things that you're connected to, that gave you a certain light. That's the aspect. And when you look at the Kabbalah, you look at the tree of life. How is this light lit? How is this tree lit up? How is this tree giving light? That becomes the knowledge, or going through that death of going into that shadow self. In order to get to that shadow self, you have to be willing to burn those bridges. That shadow is going to burn down those bridges. This is what a lot of people are afraid of. The insecurities, the things that cause the things that are in the light. So in the shadow is what created your insecurities. In the shadow is what created your jealousy complex. In the shadow is what created this aspect of thought process where you become rational and you try to bring logic to everything. You try to be literal in that sense. But if I'm always sticking to existing within the behavioral patterns and my old mentalities in this new space, I'm only existing. That means the human narrative is going to be met. The human narrative or the human thought process is needing and wanting. I need and I want. I need and I want. I don't necessarily want to do the work outside of the constriction that is keeping my identity intact, keeping my identity safe. We see this when individuals come into the mentality of thinking about being pro-black, or thinking about being, in order to be pro something, that means there has to always be a constant antagonist in your life. So in order for me to be where I'm at right now, there's nothing needed to charge me, because I know how to charge myself. So I don't indulge in antagonist paradigms. Like, you cannot, I'm outside of that paradigm. Like, to accept that definition, as I readjust myself, to accept that definition means I have to accept that definition. That means I have to find something in that space that constricts, I'm asking for the constriction. It means I can't expand it past it. And when I think about this, I think about the aspect of a pro-black movement or Moors. There's nothing against these things. I have nothing against them. But it's like, because some people actually need that in their life. They feel like they need it. But for someone that's such as myself as an occultist, it's like, if I'm constricting myself to this, I cannot expand to find the contradiction. I cannot be open enough to find the contradiction. This is why I think about this is when we think about living our negative thoughts. Living in those negative thoughts leads to the mindsets and the behavioral patterns, the emotional imbalances that stunt the development of realizing our true potential. When you're stuck in trauma, when you're stuck in a certain event, for some people, they look for that so they don't have to challenge themselves or go any further. The challenge becomes too hard. So they look for things that match that space, and they they attach to these things and build these bridges or these tethers to these things and give them a meaning. You define this by this. So I define this based on this trauma that I'm going through. So as long as I'm connected or attached to this, then I don't have to deal with the trauma, because now I have an escape. I always have something that can make me seem like I'm for myself. But in reality, I'm for extending myself to this. This is where, for a lot of people, when it comes to the actual separation, burning these bridges, it becomes very hard because they're holding on to them for some reason or other that they have not admitted to themselves. And admitting and acceptance are two different levels. You can admit something to yourself all day. Real shit. You can admit something all day. You can admit that your significant other ain't shit. You can admit that to yourself all day. But acceptance is honesty and the honesty to the understanding to growing transparency of why am I in this position? Why am I in this position? Now that I'm realizing now that I've accepted, now that I've admitted, and I've came to the moment of acceptance, now that I'm gaining the understanding and the clarity, now that I have this gap now built, now that I have this gap steps away from the bridge, am I willing to mazel tov that bridge? What is that bridge serving a purpose? That bridge is only serving a purpose to sustain me existing based on the trauma or whatever I haven't dealt with. We get into this when we think about the negative and the positive complex. We're stepping out of the literacy, because good and bad in that aspect, it only can go to the middle point before the line gets skewed. The fundamental thought process in the human narrative is simply, this is good, this is bad. But what about when you take yourself into the aspect of understanding the polarity? See, we're shifting from this moral compass that was given to you based on the program, and we're shifting into the positive and the positive and negative aspect, because the positive can go into the negative and then it then becomes positive. The positive goes into the negative. No, the negative can go into the positive and then IE becomes positive. The positive goes into the negative and IE becomes negative. It all depends on if it's serving me, if it's not serving me. So when you think about this compass, we think about negative on this side. You think about negative on one side, positive on the other side. In the center of that is the middle point, or the zero point, or the place of transparency. But since we're stuck in the narrative of that good and bad aspect of I did good to do bad, no, the reason that you continuously are thinking in that wavelength, sometimes I got to do bad to do some good. The reason that you're stuck in that fundamental mindset is because you're not willing to burn the bridge to learn how to grow and charge yourself. See, when you're stuck in the good and bad narrative, your fundamental mindset is anything that is deemed bad, you will keep in that spot and you will allow it to fester. You will harbor in on the bad aspect, and you'll keep that to sustain trauma, these relationships built on terror. I'll give you an example. Think about the aspect of, we think of racism and white supremacy. People think about white racism and white supremacy. Racism is simply the development of putting your people first. Living within a standard that is putting yourself first, putting your genetic code, putting your genetics first. Because race is simply genetics. Putting my genetics first. My genetics are so whichever genetics are built into this platform, these are the ones that I'm putting first for the self-preservation. If I take my mindset out of racism being in the bad category and I put it into the positive and negative, I can then use that to build my new bridge into the connection of understanding that root is me putting myself first. So then it becomes, what is bad about putting myself first? Think about how far you go ahead by putting yourself first in a healed environment. See, if you think about based on bad, you're automatically going to do things. You're going to put yourself in bad, and you're going to cloud your judgment based on your old moral compass. No one's acting on that moral compass but you. That is the reality what it breaks down to. No one's acting on that moral compass. The only ones that are acting on that moral compass are a slave to their emotions. They're a slave to the emotional aspect. We're going to get into that when we get into slavery versus mastery. I wanted to get into this part of breaking down the bridges first. When you start breaking down those bridges and understanding, you start setting your tone and setting your values based on what you're learning. See, for myself, through that advanced math of shadow work, in realizing that key point in that realizing that key point of when I was in that space, the things I wasn't dealing with, now I can go back and see when I wasn't dealing with it. I can see the narrative of when I wasn't dealing with things. One thing that I noticed was, I remember one time I went to a store at one point. It was like this smoke shop up the street from like around the corner from my house. And I went in there, and I remember I went and purchased. I went and made a purchase. I was buying some stuff. Bought my blunt. I think I brought some blunt wraps and some Black and Milds and some cigarettes or something. It was like way back in the day. But I remember like the register rang up 666.1. One represents me. They're solidifying to me. 666, I didn't understand it at that point in time. But now that I look at it, it was like, what if I stopped and took a moment of self-reflection on me at that point in time? When I first saw that, what if I understood what that symbol meant? What made me not see that symbol and understand to stop? The fundamental aspect of it is when you see this number, the first thing when I came into my consciousness, we'll say that when I saw 666, I was like, that's 6 neutrons, 6 protons, and 6 electrons. That's the chemical composition for melanin. So that's the chemical composition for chaos. So now even when I see that number now, when I think I have that new information in my mind, now that I understand the chemical composition for melanin, so that means it's a sign for me to sit back and reflect, because I also understand the angel number. It means to sit back. Your ego is trying to take you somewhere you ain't supposed to be going. I can't even remember what I did after I left the spot. That I can't even remember what I did after I left that spot, because all I can remember is like the dude behind the counter was like, "Ooh, that's a bad number." I was like, "That's a lovely number. I love that number." Something about that number resonated with me. I just didn't know what it was. Then further ahead, the knowledge unlocks, and then you can go back. That's the key of using this new information that you're getting. The new waves, the new shifts, the new energy that you're getting. You're not using it to maintain anything back there. A lot of us try to go put ourselves into that maintaining the things behind us to sustain our identity, to sustain these bridges, because we're still hurting. And that's the honest part of it. I was hurting a lot. So I always found myself in relationships hurting. And then since I was hurting, I would get to a point of happiness in the external state, but then I would start nicking at the relationship. Because I was wanting something that was in reality, I was wanting something that was exceeding the value that I put into myself. This becomes one of the key aspects that we do when it's time to burn these bridges. We put into these individuals, whether we're doing it based on the mental program of looking at them, and we're programming them, because remember, you're programming them. We program them to exceed a value that we're not putting into ourselves. That's why this is most of the times, that's why you always pissed off at somebody. When they do something or say something, they're only doing something based on the program that you put in there. How is that trigger resonating with you? That's what you need to be looking at, instead of trying to make it work. Instead of trying to make it work to your advantage, or writing it off as, man, that's what happens in life. Because you're reacting off the old behavioral pattern. Back in the day, you had somebody fuck you over, mess you up, do something bad to you. And now everybody that's around you in these new bridges, you've given them the open season to do something fucked up to a certain point, to a certain extent. Once you master it, it ain't free no more. That is the main key whenever you understand when you have to burn those bridges. I understand that if I burn a bridge, I stand on the bridge when I burn it. and I fall down into the ashes, I land into that water, and then I recreate, and then because I know I can swim. I know what I can do. I can walk on fucking water. I'm good. Let that bridge fall. I'm walking on the water. Because the water is nothing but my abundance, my opportunity to align with my abundance, my opportunity to align with my prosperity, my wealth, everything that is higher with me. So I know I need that cleansing. I ain't going to run away from the burning. Because the burning going to burn away everything. The bridge burning itself is going to take away everything impure anyway. So when I fall in the water, it's naturally a cleansing. I'm cleansing myself for the next level, what I need to get to. This becomes the mindset when you moving forward. A lot of us put ourselves into that mindset where we get stuck living in those thoughts. We exist in an illusion created by those very behavioral patterns and mentalities. I remember there was a lot of patterns and mentalities that I held. And when it came time when they got challenged, I would be triggered in, this is just the way that I am. You have to accept me for who I am. You say you love me, right? So then what I'm doing in reality is I'm creating the illusion that I'm putting under the definition of a condition. So you have to love me. You say that you love me. That means you say that you accept me. What I said last week, you're not telling people to accept you. You're telling people to expect. The expectation is you're setting an expectation that exceeds the value that you are willing to put back into yourself. You see how it all comes back to you. Everything that you do is naturally going to come back to you. Everything that you're dealing with outside of yourself is naturally going to come back to you. It's reflective of you. The further that you go out, past all the negative, understanding that negative, you hit that middle point, you need to have that clarity and transparency to turn that negative charge, take that negative charge and apply it to your positive going forward. But you got to change your spectrum. You got to change, does it serve me, does it not serve me? Then you understand the betrayals. You understand the betrayals. You understand when you got fired. You understand when you had to quit that job. You understand why motherfuckers are quitting on you. Because in reality, motherfuckers that quit on me, and this is some real shit that I thought about. When people were quitting on me, it was because it was because of that exceeded value that I put out there that I was not willing, I was quitting on myself. So I wanted to give the responsibility to other people. I wanted to give the responsibility of making me happy and making me feel okay and giving me money and making sure I was financially good. I was putting all that on everybody else. And then that bled out into the way I treated my job. That bled out into the way that I treated the aspects of even understanding, making separation. Because everything that I was doing was stuck within that space based on those old behavior patterns. I needed the root of the behavior. I needed the root that created my mentality. So then I didn't break away from the toxic. I couldn't break away from the toxicity because I was still toxic. I was still harboring the toxin. I was still harboring the neurotoxin that created that conduit. When we think about the aspect of that neurotoxin or that the nano bites, I created that based on my mind. When you think about watch the Iron Man Extremist cartoon joint, or watch anything that got nanobites in it when they creating things with nanos. That's the aspect of what you do whenever you using your mind. That's the power of your mind. You create the things in your life that are sustaining. You create why that bridge still there. Once you start burning down those bridges, I remember when I started really allowing those bridges to burn, allowing individuals to do what the fuck I knew that niggas gonna do nigga shit. And I remember watching them burn down them bridges. I remember just standing on the other edge of the bridge. I remember standing there just watching it burn. I visualized the bridges burning. And I would look and I would sit there and I'd be like, all right, cool. I've left everything that you need to rebuild this bridge to be sustainable to come over on this side. So that bridge can be fireproof is all right there already. What you gonna do? You ready? You ready to cross that bridge? Ready to cross that water? But that becomes your reality yourself. Burning down these bridges are the main key. Allowing these bridges to burn. Most of us get scared because, man, what if you don't need them? Because whatever you need, whatever you desire, you're going to be given as you ascend. Whatever you desire, you're going to be given everything that's required to create it based on your rising, based on you shifting. So what are you holding on to? And then you start understanding why those certain things were not supposed to come into play. You start being really, really honest with yourself. I had to get really, really honest with myself with a lot of things. And I had to get really, really honest with standing by the things that I had to be really, really honest and really, really transparent in the understanding so I could speak clearly and speak without the aspect of the emotion, so I could be open and receive what I needed to do to move forward. Because you only got two choices. Once someone tells you what they're not going to do, and they give you that lineup of and then you ask the question of why. That's the main thing. Being able to ask the why, not to get an answer to formulate your shit. We don't get into that versus the slave versus the master mentality in order for me to move forward. But yeah, we don't get into this. We don't get deeper into this. Thank you for choosing the God Hour. And we back. But yeah, burning those bridges is going to be the key. You got to burn those bridges and allow yourself to fall into that. Allow yourself to fall into that water of clarity. Stop being afraid to swim. Stop being afraid to dive in. We want to dive into so many things that we love diving into the toxic ways and manners that sustain our mentality, that old mentality and old behavior. And then we don't realize that that's the slavery versus mentality. Slavery versus the mastery mentality. I love that I've mastered so much in this period for myself because I knew that I was coming down, I had to do some work. Because I went back and I looked at all those spaces. Like, I realized that I had a lot. I realized that this is my going away. So everything that I do in this moment in time is my moment of celebration. And in order to truly celebrate, I can't be a slave to the emotions. I can't be a slave to my mentality and my behavior. I can't be a slave to where I was at a point in time in my life. I can't be a slave to that. That's where mastery is the key. That's why you say, I am self, I am law, I am master. When you become the law, when you become self, when you become the law, when you become the master, that means you are living within the understanding and the growing in the understanding of the laws of the polarity, the laws of your correspondence, the laws of your mind being all and everything, the universe being mental. You're understanding the gender based on the masculine and the feminine, bring yourself into balance. Understanding that you are divine, you're a divine level being. I love being in the divine masculine mindset, because being in a divine masculine mindset, it symbolizes the aspect that I have risen into understanding and open to further understanding and growing of the feminine aspect, the feminine principles, which is my nurturing and my creating. That's how that's built. So when I look at the divine masculine with my knowledge, that's what I'm building. So I'm hungry for that knowledge. So I continue nurturing, and with that wisdom, it grows into my guidance. But this is where most of us, after we start scared to burn those bridges, cutting away from certain things, what are you nurturing? You're naturally nurturing the existence of those attachments. So then the knowledge that you're holding on to, or the knowledge that you go to acquire, if it does not fit the constraints of your thought process, then it kicks out. And this is where a lot of people will feel lost in their journey, lost in their travels, because you're still trying to confine the expansion pack to a constricted space. It's like, take your laptop, take your phone. If your phone got too many apps on it, after a while, it's not going to work correctly. If your hard drive in your laptop, your computer has too much stuff on it, it's not going to work correctly. Certain programs are going to keep shutting down. When you think about this whole aspect of the matrix, there's too much information on the motherboard. That's why you look at, when we created the aspects of, you look at the pyramids and how they're laid out, it's a motherboard. There's too much data on the motherboard. This motherboard was not meant to sustain that much data. Period. You weren't meant to sustain that much, hold on to that much shit. Period. You holding on to some old aspects, and then you're wondering why your present life is not flourishing. You wondering why your present life is not flourishing? What are you holding on to? You doing all the rituals, you doing all your intentions, but now you're wondering why your consistency in your meditation is off. You're wondering why your energy is low. You're wondering why you always in a depressed state. You're wondering why you always in these spaces. It's because you're a slave bound to something. You made your old mentalities your master. You made your old behaviors your master. You made not dealing with your emotions or not allowing yourself to cleanse and clear yourself out. You made yourself a slave to it. So now you're a slave to the. So now that you're a slave to that, when you have the time to escape, you escaping things that only feed the slave mentality. You never can go further ahead to become proactive because you're stuck in a reactive mindset. You always stuck behind the ball. So you can't even enjoy life when you can. Because that natural narrative of needing and wanting is something that you always clinging to. I need this and I need this and I need this. You need so much stuff, you want so much stuff, but you don't ever have time to acquire it. As I'm looking up at my light that's of course it's on the ceiling, I'm seeing the light and the rays that beam around from the light, and it's an eye. And I'm looking at it right now and I'm kind of mesmerized by it. I'm like, damn, nigga, like, I'm letting the light in right now, literally. And that's the symbolism or the sign that I'm in the right space. That's what you're looking for. Let's go back to the aspect when I was telling you about being a slave to my mentality, being a slave to my urges, being a slave to my old behaviors, because I was still using those old behaviors. Since I'm using those old behaviors, I'm using those old mentalities, and I'm existing based on those old behaviors and those old mentalities, everything that I'm doing has a condition to it. So everything in reflection has a condition to it. This is something that we really need to think about. When I thought about the aspect of thinking about my and that first, I could say, real relationship, that there was conditions to it. And it was more like a bartering system. And when you move in that career mode that I've been speaking on, you move in a bartering system. Whether you want to admit it or not, you moving in a bartering system. And when certain things aren't being met, but because of your old mentality, your old behavior and your old mentality forces you to be shut off from things. When it comes time to actually voice that, it's voicing through the hurt. So it becomes a buildup or a blockage. That's that blockage that's in your throat chakra. That's that blockage that's in your throat chakra. That blockage didn't start here in your throat chakra. It didn't start from what it fed from what's on your heart. That what's being fed, that was what's feeding, how it fed from off your heart is what you're using to empower it. And what you're using to empower it is based on that balancing of, am I confident in this decision, or am I so arrogant in this thought process based on what I'm rooted in, what I know? Since I know all of this and I'm not letting go of what I know, I cannot be guided by the wisdom, or I cannot establish the guidance and using my wisdom, because wisdom is the aspect in this context. Wisdom is knowing how to use my emotions in balance. Wisdom is knowing how to use my emotions, learning how to balance, or using my emotions in balance. I love the knowing and the further understanding of using my emotions in balance. So if somebody tries to get me upset or make me mad or whatever, the most thing that I can say is I'm irritated because I'm disappointed. Because you created this condition that you expect me to live under. I will accept your condition. But in me accepting your condition, you got to accept my response to your condition. So if I separate, I step away, I don't want to be involved in certain aspects, you got to accept that. Because you created this space based on your mentality and your behavior, so you can't even enjoy this now. This is what happens when you are a slave to your emotions. When you're a slave to your emotions, you're always in a reactive state. Most people that are constricted to one side or the other, that choose one side or the other, man, I'm pro-black and I'm pro-this and I'm conscious and I'm so super fucking woke. You close yourself off to seeing everything else on the other side of the spectrum that can actually serve you, that you can feed from. You got a smorgasbord over there to feed from. But since you're so close-minded, you're using the left side of your brain, you're using that left-sided logic, everything that you're doing is taken from a literal standpoint. So anything that's not based upon what you constricted yourself in, you cannot use and download. This becomes the aspect for a lot of individuals when you're having conversations with people and you feel that you feel hurt, or you feel a certain sense because they're moving to a certain space and you're feeling like you're left behind. Because you're used to attachment. Attachment feeds off of the trauma and the old behavior pattern and the old mentality. Your attachments fed off of that. Your attachments fed off that and gave you the attention based on that. But when you meet individuals that don't deal with those types of aspects, nigga, I don't accept that in my life. That's not something that I accept. That's not something that I want to be around. And then that's what trigger. You're like, man, now I'm angry. They don't want to do this. They don't want to do that. They don't want to do this. Maybe it's because then you start looking in the external environment to look for reasons to make it that when they gave you the exact truth of where they were at. But since you're not used to getting an exact aspect of, you're not used to getting that type of information, you can't break it down using your logic. You can't break it down using the intellectual aspect or that logic and reasoning, you can't compute it. So now you're upset because you cannot compute this, and now you feel like you're further behind. Now you're going to feel like you're further lost because you can't compute that information. Guess what? You got to step out of the living in the past to living in the now. Where are you at right now in your life? Are you happy with where you're at right now? You should be. Because the next goal is to expound upon this happiness. If I'm not happy in the space if I'm not happy where I'm at, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to take my step back. I'm going to go back and take self-reflection. Why am I not happy here? What am I supposed to be learning here? That's the first thing I'm going to do. What am I supposed to be learning here? Why was I told to come to this position? Because I was led here by something to get something. Let me see what I'm supposed to be getting from here. Because until I get what I'm supposed to get from here, I'm always going to end up a slave to the urge. I'm gonna, instead of looking for what I need to be looking for, this is what happens for a lot of individuals. Instead of doing the work and you're looking for an escape, and your mind's used to looking for the escape so you can let off some steam, or I'm always in a constant state of bliss. So I don't have to let off steam. Even when I do let off steam, I have naturally within my aspects of my life, I have things to let off my steam. I got the gym when I first wake up to keep my energy in order. I got meditation to keep my energy in order. So before I even touch down into full work mode, or full actually my play mode, this is play for me, this is therapy for me, jump into a session, doing a reading, doing whatever I'm doing, my mind's already ready. My mind's open, my mind's clear, there is no chatter. I can move forward. I can have 6, 7 ideas at once. I can move and like, nigga, I'm gonna do this, and this next. And I can, since my mind's always looking for the aspect of the solution, since I've mastered since I'm mastering in that certain aspect, master the aspects of my mind, now that I'm in that space, I can move clearly. I'm not thinking about, man, it's gonna cost this much to do this and cost this much to do this. As I said earlier, from the software that I use to record my podcast, to the software that I use to create my music, to the all the little intricate aspects of creating ads, all of that's within the range. All of that's naturally within the alignment of my already there abundance. But I'm not thinking, because also I'm not thinking on this based upon money. I'm not thinking about it based upon money, so I don't have to I'm not terraforming. I'm not forming in fear. I'm not forming anything based on terror. If I don't do this, or if I'm not saying this, or if I'm not connecting to this, then I can't get views, then I can't get spins, I can't get streams, then I can't get services, then I can't perform services. So since I can't perform services, then I can't pay this, or I can't eat. I'm not thinking in that narrative. This is what's needed. This is therapy. I remember watching a Drink Champs interview, the Drink Champs episode with David Bannon. He was like, yo, even if I don't sell one article of clothing, I put the same amount of money and time that I used to put into buying clothes and staying fresh and staying within the trend. I put that same amount of time and money, that same amount of value in creating my own clothes. So regardless, I'm gonna always have a closet full of clothes, because I've already created this line of clothes. I'm always gonna have a line of clothes. I'm always gonna have something to wear. This is the mentality. I'm always gonna have something to eat. And in the days that I don't have something to eat, let's say I don't have nothing to eat for 3 days. I guess I'm fasting for 3 days. Let's say it rains for a whole week and I can't get outside because it's damn near flooded in my fucking complex. Oh well, let's see what I got in the house. Preventative maintenance. See, when you a slave to your emotions, when you're a slave to your old behaviors, your old mentalities, you're constantly looking, you're constantly needing, you're constantly wanting. Therefore, you're constantly reacting. Therefore, you'll naturally procrastinate to the last minute. And then you use procrastination as someone to say procrastination is negative. No, procrastination is forcing you to slow down. Similar to depression is the aspect of your higher self telling you, how long are we going to play this image? Procrastination is like, before you go any further, it's time to take care of home. Before you run out that door, it's time to take care of your house. Before you run out that door, before you go out that door to go try to clean up somebody else's life, clean up somebody else's shit, it's time for you to clean up your shit. That's why you get those bouts of procrastination. That's why you get those bouts of depression and you don't feel like doing something. Because your body is telling you to stop. Let's reflect. Let's evaluate. Let's get this stuff in order before we do that. Your soul always speaking to you. Are you willing to listen to it? When you mastering yourself, your soul get louder. When you a slave, your ego's louder. When you are a slave, when you're in that slavery mentality, a slave to your emotions, a slave to maintaining the external status of yourself, a slave to your anger, your sadness, a slave to always trying to be happy, a slave to trying to put these conditions that exceed the values of the love of that you're putting value, exceedingly high values on in those conditions into others that you're not willing to put into yourself. You become a slave. All you're doing is reacting. That's why that mastery is going to be that key. Until you learn how to master your shit, you ain't doing nothing. Until you master it, it's literally free. I took that from the mindset I was thinking about. I said it on Friday in the lecture. And I was thinking to myself, I was remembering when I was first learning how to do natal charts, first learning how to do readings, first learning how to do energy reading, tarot readings, based on energy, based on using that amount of energy for that channeling, natal chart analysis, even down to me now using my psychology credentials, and then taking that deeper into the aspect of the occult, which is that means the hidden culture. The hidden culture, the mind is all, everything being mental, so it's the subconscious mind. So going into that aspect, and I remember doing the work, and I was working on myself. And then I remember sharing information. And I would just share the information because I was still learning it. I'm still learning the information. But I've come to a point that now that I've learned a certain amount of information, now that I'm providing the services are the prices for the services. That's the equivalent to the investment that I'm willing to put into myself. I invested this amount of myself into doing this, into cultivating my purpose. In order for you to come into this realm, to come into this space and take on the betterment of using these services that I provide, that's the price. That's when you mastering yourself. Because I can guarantee this because I live by it. I live in the now by this. If I'm in my mindset where I'm at right now, I can guarantee, based on the love I have for myself, that exceeds all boundaries and is limitless. The love simply just on the love that I have of the knowledge that I have of me. My boundaries are some of the strongest boundaries. They transparent as hell. My boundaries are transparent. Clear. You can see right through them. But if you ain't got the code, you can't walk through it. That is a major key. A lot of us have walls put up, and the problem with a wall is you can't see through it. The most you can do with a wall is put a poster up on it. I remember being in my room. I remember, if you remember being in your room and you put like all the posters. I remember my room, and I remember me and my brother used to put like posters on the wall of like each. This is back when you could think about music being like everybody had their cliques. Like, so like if you were like, if I put up a Timbaland picture, around that Timbaland picture, I could put Missy Elliott, Genuine, Player, and then put them in a side because that was like the VA scene. And then when it was the New York scene, I could put Wu-Tang together. I could put Rockefeller together on the wall. I can create these spaces on the wall because that's the image that I was looking at. Because I could get a certain reaction or a certain thought when I looked at it. Even at a young age, you don't even realize when you putting them posters on the wall and like you were thinking about that music or you were thinking about a certain aspect of time when you were doing it, you were already programming your sigils on the wall anyway. You were already using music. You were already mastering. You are mastering the aspects of music. That's why whenever you listen to music, you feel a certain way. Because it's showing you what comes up based on that rhythm, that frequency. That's what you're supposed to work on. That's why you listen to certain music at certain point in time. That's why, like, I listen to Indian trap, binaural beats, Indian trap. That's what's always playing in my space. Whenever I'm like doing work, that's what's playing in my space at all times. When I want to feel like I'm in that warrior mindset, need that inspiration of that warrior mentality. When I need that alchemical rhythm to boost my DMT release, to boost my boost my levels, I'm doing it based on the frequency. And it's easier. It gets easier and easier and easier because now it's this background noise. I forget that I put it on because it's naturally a part of me now. When you're a slave to your mentality, them posters that you got on your wall, you're looking at those posters for release. When you're a slave to your mentality, slave to your emotions, that's what you're doing. You need that as an escape. There's two different aspects. Like once you are mastering yourself, when you listen to music, it doesn't make you feel a certain way. And I'm trying to explain this in the best way. It activates the different neural pattern, them nanobytes, and it creates something different. There's an article, I forgot the name of the article, but it was some, I forgot who the hell posted it, but it was talking about the dimensions. Every time that you think and you're forming something, if you're forming based on terror, whenever you think, your mind creates 11 different dimensions, or it opens up to 11 different dimensions. So think about it. If I'm stuck existing in my past and I'm listening to a certain song, so I'm opening up them gateways and I'm stuck in that pattern. I'm thinking about the old pattern, old mentality. I'm thinking about something old and I'm only existing into the illusion. I'm opening up myself to those gateways to form the things that I'm going to form whatever I need to form within that space. So then you start doing things you'll do things just to see how far you can push it. But it's not in a healthy aspect. It's in a very toxic aspect. I'm going to see how far I'm going to push this before it breaks. When you're doing that in that slave mentality, you're automatically going to apologize. See, in this mastery shit, I'm totally unapologetic. I say what I say at the point in time. I say whatever I want, whenever I want. But here's the key. This is what people in that slave mentality do when they're doing it. When they're in that slave mentality, they say what they can. And when they say what they can, they say just enough to stay within the constriction. And then when they say what they push the limit, they'll blame it on, man, I just had a whole moment. I'm sorry. Then you're just apologizing. If you mastering your shit and you understand the aspect of once I master it, I'm being unapologetic is not on the term of I say whatever the fuck I want. Being unapologetic in the slave mentality will always hinder you to when you're saying whatever you want. And then you're like, nah, man, I didn't mean to really say that. When you mastered your emotions, when you in that balance and you saying whatever you want, you notice how you're saying whatever you want because it's based on the discipline. You know how to step back. You know what to say and when to say it. You know how to move. You know your shit's gonna rustle some feathers. You don't give a fuck about that. Because if you're speaking it, that means it needs to be spoken. Your intuition is in tune. Therefore, you're speaking it because it needs to be spoken at that point in time. You're causing that much needed release in somebody's space. And that's what we're gonna get into in living in the now. You know, we back. I like that beat drop that I put in there. But yeah, understanding that being a slave to your emotions versus being the mastery of yourself. That lives this aspect. Since we burned down those bridges, since we understand, we got a little understanding on that aspect. We know we can always go deeper. We're going to get into the aspects of understanding living in the now. Living in the now requires living in the now requires living in the now requires acknowledging the patterns, which are those triggers of the old behaviors and old mentalities. This is a crucial key when it comes into your frequency of your manifesting. When you manifest based on the aspect of the survival mindset, and this is how we're gonna build on it. When you manifest based on the survival mindset, when that thing outgrows that space, let's say you want to manifest a car. You manifest the car based on survival. Now the car's starting to act up. Shit in the car ain't working no more. What's not working in the car? Use that as an example. What's not working in the car? Whenever you manifest that job based on survival, I hope I get this job. I hope I get this job. This is why most people hope. That hope mentality to exist. This is why most people go into that hope mentality based on existing. When they get what they need, they do not know how to maintain it. Because they have not created the necessary bridges that are connecting to the things that will help them maintain it. This is when your frequency starts to be off. When you understand those trauma bonds, those things that you built off of terror, when the terror subsides, or the stimulant or the chaos subsides, you naturally gonna feel like you need something else. I was thinking about it when I was watching the Boosie and Mike Tyson interview. When he was on Mike Tyson's podcast. And then shout out to my man's the guy Ricky Prestige, because he did a small video breakdown, and it made me go back to go look at the video to peep certain things. And one of the things that I did peep that he brought up in the psychological thing, your external state, trying to maintain the external state of being, are trophies. We try to keep things around us and we don't realize that they're just trophies. They hold no value other than this nostalgic or the nostalgic feeling. This goes into the exceeding the value that we're not willing to put into ourselves. So we'll constantly try to keep that trophy shiny, nice and clean. What are some of the trophies that are in your life? When you start realizing, you start setting the tone of living in the now, you're not looking for the trophies. You're not looking for the accolades. You're not looking for this. One of my mentors taught me, it doesn't matter who did it, because it's not about the credit. It's the fact that it got done. If you're always looking for the credit, then after a point in time, when you stop getting credit for simply just being there, that's one thing that I remember. When he used to tell us, incoherent, the spirit kicked in on that one. That going to your job and you expect something just because you showed up to your job. That's the bare minimum. That's what you learned in the interview. That's what you learned in your orientation, if you had it. So, wanting something more for the bare minimum is doing what? Existing in the old mentality and the behavior. You'll always put out the least amount of work. And then you'll say, I'm doing all this work. What you're doing is you'll put in all this work into a certain aspect, but because you're trying to manifest it based on the survival aspect, the things that are coming up based on the survival mindset, that's the stuff that you need to work on. So if you're not learning and you keep repeating the same thing and you're realizing that you're not getting the result that you're aspiring, you're wanting this exceedingly exceptional result, that lets you understand that that space no longer can fulfill your need. That means in reflection, look at yourself. How are you not fulfilling yourself? But remember, what are you pouring out of? That emotional cup, that emotional cup that's overflowing, what emotions are in there? Are the emotions that are inside of that cup based on a balance, or are they imbalanced? Are they based upon resentment? Are they based upon the trauma, the resentment from the trauma, the repression, the anger, the self-sabotage? What are you pouring out of that cup? This is why when people tell people, I remember being at my job before the no longer needing it, because I realized where I needed to be at. There was a server, and she got told that her energy was bad. Can I get another server? And she came into the kitchen and she was mad, upset. She was cursing, and can't believe they said that to me. I make sure everybody get everything that they need. That don't matter. If somebody can read your energy, they can read your energy. You better accept that, because that's a sign. Some people are not used to hearing that type of that. You have to understand that some people are not used to that level of light. And this is very big. It's going to help you in living in this now. Me sitting in my space right now and being able to produce the content that I produce, because I'm always in a constant state of positive. That does not mean that I will not have a upsetting day and irritation. That's not what that means. Living in the now is accepting everything that comes to you at this point. Being able to understand that, let me readjust my boundaries. One of my boundaries is falling a little short. This is your auric field. One of my boundaries is a little weaker. That's what that's showing me. If somebody can irritate me in this space, that means the boundary, sometimes the boundary is getting weaker. But why is that boundary weakening? Remember, everything's in a constant state of renewal. Everything's in a constant state of reset. So once you reach a certain level, when your boundaries are no longer able to hold it, no longer able to protect that energy, it may mean that it's time to move outside of that space. You're going to do it intentionally, or you're going to do it unintentionally. You're going to do that shit intentionally or unintentionally. You're going to get to a point where you're like, you know what? This is not working for me no more. That's what you about to get into. You're going to be in that space like, nigga, that shit don't work for me no more. And that's what this becomes a part of the accepting process. A lot of us are scared to actually accept these things because we're sitting there in that space like, man, I'm scared, man. I don't know. But you have to understand this. The things that you're trying to manifest, you're trying to partner with, living inside of this now, you got to think about where you manifesting it from. See, if you coming from the aspect of existing in this space, then by nature, when it comes time to reset, that has to go away. Because it was only meant to be there based on you being in a state of survival. This is why when you get to a certain point in your work, when you're doing your work, certain things don't even fucking matter to you no more. This is when Bobby Hemmett will talk about the aspects of like, why would I get angry? Why am I angry? Why am I upset? Why am I feeling anything that I'm not using to put into my favor? You dig? Like, why? Like, if I walked outside and it's raining right now, nigga, I needed to walk in the rain. I'm gonna walk to the rain, walk to the mailbox in the rain, walk back in here, change my clothes, hop in the shower. Or I might stand out there in the rain till the rain slows down. Because I'm already getting wet. So what does it matter? I'm already getting wet. Man, you can get sick though. No, I won't. My body will heat up by the time I eat. My body will heat up as soon as I hit the stairs and come into the house. My body will start heating up. So it's naturally going to kill off anything that attached to me based into that aspect, but it was a cleansing aspect. So this stuff needed to fall away. This is living in the now. When you're living in this aspect of now, everything feels good. Everything feels better. Even the worst shit feels better because you know it's there for a purpose. You know that happened to expose something inside of you. You know you keep coming to that point. You know you ain't doing the work you're supposed to be doing. You know you holding on to some shit you ain't supposed to be holding on to. That's why that shit's making you let that shit go. For a lot of people right now, they're in their space. They're in that space. They're feeling this sense of procrastination. They're feeling that sense of depression. They're feeling that sense of low energy. They're feeling all of these aspects. And they're trying to find themselves. They find themselves feeling smaller. Or they're finding themselves feeling smaller. Because their energy is now, they're now shedding. They're in a state of shedding. Whenever you feel small inside of a space, it's an aspect of shedding. So whenever you feel that sense of rejection, it's an aspect of something that's supposed to be shedding. Something's supposed to be shed. That's what the trigger is activating. It's activating the shedding process. So when you feel some certain type of way about a certain type of event or wherever you're at, you're feeling some type of way about a certain type of person or something that they've done or that they're doing, that shedding aspect is forcing you out of that shell so you can say what you need to say inside of that space. Regardless if it's something that's going, regardless of what you're about to say, it's something that needs to be said. That's why you're in that space. That's why your mindset is activated within that space, within that mindset, because it's something that you got to take care of. Either you're going to take care of it or you're not. And if you don't take care of it, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have to repeat it. It's going to be a repeat trip. A lot of people get stuck within the prison scapes of their mind simply because they feel like the stuff that they're putting up on those walls, that equates to them building their barriers. But you got to take the wall down first. That's the most important part. Because when you start doing this work, the things that you summon based on survival, the things that you summon based on survival in the existence of that illusion, that unifying aspect, those things are no longer going to serve a purpose. And either you're going to make the separation, or ultimately you're going to make the separation, or it's naturally going to fall away. You're just not going to fit anymore. You're going to find yourself more and more trying to force yourself to be in that space. You're going to find yourself more and more trying to force those conversations. You're going to find yourself more and more trying to force sustaining that bridge. And now y'all both standing in the middle of the bridge, or now you standing in the parking lot of your job at 11 o'clock at night, upset that it was another bad night. You didn't make any money, or it was another bad night and y'all had 50-minute ticket times and you got a write up, or you in the middle of the mall parking lot and you sitting there because your register came up short. Whatever it may be, you upset. And since you reacting based on the emotional aspect, you ain't seeing what the fuck is showing you. If my register come up short at my fucking job, I'm not going to be upset at the job. I'm going to take that moment in time and like, where am I coming up short at with changes in my life? If I'm not getting the tip that I deserve at my job based on my service, I'm going to take a look at where in my life, where in me right now am I not providing outstanding service into my change? Wherever I'm at, if I'm sitting there in my relation, if I'm sitting there in the relationship with a family member, friend, whoever it may be, significant other, whatever it may be, I'm going to take that space and time and see if I'm not being fulfilled in this space, in this friendship, in this relationship, whatever it is. Where am I not fulfilling myself? Or have I overextended and put an exceeding value? I'm going to keep going back to that. An exceeding value or a cost or exceeding value into this space that's that I'm not willing to put into myself because I was looking for a place to survive at. I'm looking for a place to survive. I don't think anybody's going to be able to deal with me because I'm broken. That's how most of these relationships are built. You won't leave the relationship because you have created conduits, which can be the children. And now you gain the stress. Now you didn't gain stress weight. You didn't gain this weight based on the stress because you physically manifesting the stress and the weight gain. And then you got 4 or 5 kids with this dude, or 4 or 5 kids with this. You got 4 or 5 kids. This is for the queens. This is especially just for the queens. You got kids with this individual. And now you feel like just because you have all of this extended aspect, no one's going to want you, or no one's going to need you, or put any need or any want into you because you have all of this excess. because you're not accepting that every time that you stay into that space, you got to create another excess. You got to create another conduit to exist within that space. That takes you into the mentality when people think about the kid's going to save the relationship. Having a child's going to save a relationship. Or when you think about the baby mother that holds the kid away from the father because the father no longer wants to be in that space. Or the father that tries his damnedest to keep the child away from the mother because they don't want him inside of that space. All the way up to the brother that keeps high regard for, he has established himself in an external state with money or whatever it may be, or female, whatever, male or female. We all talking about energy right here. So you think you're taking the dominant approach or the masculine approach because you have the money. You have the knowing to make a certain amount of, you have the knowing to sustain that space based on the money, but you have no sense of guidance. You have no sense of guidance or wisdom to sustain growing that. This happens with a lot of people where you're stuck in that independent mentality. When you're stuck in the independent mentality, you are existing. Because you're always going to need and want something else. And then you're always going to try to find an escape. And then you're always going to try to find an escape. And then you're going to try to put conditions on something to be around you. And then you're always going to be overly open in relationships. You're always going to be overly open with your aspects of yourself because you need that attention. So then when it gets tested, guess what happens? Your existence is, your living is not being tested ever. It's your existence. Because when you truly living, it can't be tested. When you living in your purpose, when you living in your shit, it can't be tested. It can be tested. No, it can't be tested in the aspect of being a challenge to help you go further. You'll put it like that. When you are existing, whether you're living or existing in this space, is going to be tested. But how that test is going to be perceived is based on that living or that existing. See, I'm living. I live in my spiritual shit. I live in my purpose. I live in my shit. So the tests that come to me are bettering me in they're sustaining, they're helping me be able to sustain, obtain, and rise in my shit. See, when you in the aspect of existing and that test hits you, it's going to test that constriction. See, when I'm tested, it's testing me ready. It's testing me saying, nigga, you ready for the expansion. But when somebody's existing, it's testing them to get them out of that constriction. How long are you going to stay constricted into that space and you're not really doing anything? How long are you going to sit there and keep saying, I'm doing this for this? There's a difference between the brother or the sister that's on the corner selling knick-knack, paddywhacks, and give dogs bones to sustain because they just want to do it, because that's just them, that's just extra. And then the person that's doing it based on survival. Because there's three aspects to the survival process in living in it. You're either going to do things to maintain the mentality, to maintain the physical. You're either going to maintain the mentality, the emotion, or the outcome. When we do things, it's either to maintain the mentality, to sustain the behavior, or maintain the outcome. I'm going to give you an example. Somebody can say that, let's use music for example. They used to see somebody, a celebrity on TV. Man, I would never sell my soul or do none of that shit to get that. I'm going to do it this way to get my house. I'm going to do it this way to get this car. I'm going to do it this way to get this. You're doing the same thing they doing. That's why it resonates and it make you mad, because you're doing the same thing they doing. Because you either going to succumb to the mentality, succumb to the behavior, or succumb to the outcome. When you think about lower level physical shit, so let's say you want to get that crib, but it's based on the external state of trying to maintain based on the trauma that you're not dealing with. You're going to do whatever it is to get to the outcome. So you're going to do whatever exploits your energy. You're going to exploit your energy in ways to get to that outcome. And you're going to repeat exploiting your energy till you get that outcome. See how that works? Or you're going to exploit your behavior until it gets to that outcome. Or you're going to exploit your mentality until it gets to that outcome. You see how all that shit ties together? Just so you can exist in your state, stay in your state of being, stay in your state of mind. That's what locks a lot of people down. You won't go any further past a certain point, knowing what the fuck you need to do. This is what makes it so bad for some people. You can know exactly what you need to be doing, but you holding on to one thought. You holding on to one thought that won't let you go forward. That one thought is being fed all that energy. So now that it's feeding all that energy based on the existence, so the existence is cloudy because it's based on behaviors and mentality. So it's a cloudy to your middle point. So now I'm taking this cloudiness of my middle point and then I keep reverting back to the negative because I've built things within my negative aspects that match this existence. So when I need to live in the now, so I switch that to the living in the now, I'm on the positive side of that scale, but I do not stay on the positive side of that scale. See, it can be both sides. It can go sides of that. You can be existing in the positive that you got from back then and do the same exact thing. I got a car, I got the job, I got this, and this. I'm able to do a little bit of stuff that I can do. I got my escape, so I got my positives. That existence, you're still existing in that middle point, and it's still cloudy. It's not until you understand that those negatives gave you those positives, and then you open up the clarity of the middle point. This is when your frequency actually truly starts to change. This is when you start to manifest based on alignment and not surviving. Alignment and not surviving. Alignment and not surviving. Everything I do is based on alignment. So the more that I align, the stronger that my energy becomes. The more that I align, the things that are coming up for me to deal with, I'm able to deal with inside of that space because that's the reality of me being within that space. I know I need to deal with something. I can accept it because I have clarity because my middle point is transparent. So I can see exactly what I need to do. It ain't clouded by judgment. It ain't clouded by anger. It's not clouded by any emotional imbalance. That shit clear, crystal clear, gold ring, see-through. And that filter work better than a Nuva ring. Yeah, I said it. Compare your clear transparency, that looking glass, to that Nuva ring shit when it came out. It's supposed to stop things from getting through. Stop the things from getting through so you still can enjoy things. So use that. We don't use that as the example. I don't know why that just came to my mind. Whatever. But that's the mentality that you in. Crystal clear. I can see everything clearly. My spectrum to be able to see on all levels and all paradigms because I'm not trapped within anything. I've acknowledged the traps. If there's a hole there, I've learned how to fill it. Now that I've gotten to a higher level, now that I'm in higher aspects of myself, the first aspect was killing off the old aspects of myself. Then it became perfecting those memories. Think about that wall that you on, that wall, that mosaic of you, and you're perfecting it so you can have a perfect, clear image of your true self. That is the key. That's what you're doing living in the now. The more that you live in the now, that mosaic that is the picture of the true you, whatever vision that you have chosen as the true you, becomes more and more clear. You start doing the things that you need to do to maintain the true you and not stay stuck in the old. Break the mentality. Break the pattern. It ain't hard. It's only hard if you want it to be. It go by real easy once you understand the concept. Once you take yourself out of that left brain trying to rationalize where I'm going to keep this. I'm going to rationalize keeping my stuff. Let that shit go. I'm going to rationalize keeping my stuff. Let that shit go. I'm going to rationalize keeping my stuff. Let that shit go. So you can better look at it. That's going to be your key. Burning down those bridges, allowing yourself to fall into those waters. Understanding you're shifting from the slave mentality, the slave to your emotions, to mastering your balance. And then you're going to start living in the now, I can guarantee you. But stay tuned for the plug talk. And then we're going to get into that closeout. Thank you for choosing another episode of the God Hour podcast. I love you. We love us. I'll see you in a minute. Ashe.
Welcome. We know we got to keep you plugged in with that plug talk. As I said earlier in the weekly reading, if you're interested in the reading, interested in natal chart analysis, interested in the shadow work, I'm at the shadow reading with the consultation, where we discuss the aspects of what you need to learn, what you need to accept, what you need to forgive, what you need to release, what you are going to learn, where you're going to find healing and recovery, and where you're going to find the help. Along with, after that, then we do the build, breaking down where you at and where you're trying to go, and if you're feeling lost, because everybody needs that boost sometimes, and it's not cool to have to do it you don't have to do it by yourself. Like, allow somebody such as myself or a healer, shaman, somebody to give you that, somebody that's giving you the aspect they're learning from you as you're learning from them. And that's what GoDCoAlchemistLLC.com is for. Hit me at Rock Hollow Nijis in my inbox on Facebook, Papa_Lucy666 in the DMs on Instagram. Book that service. Book your service today. Whether it's the reading, you want a natal chart analysis to get that clarity, whatever it may be. The first step is to set up that appointment. Online availability. We do the Zoom calls, the Zoom or the Skype calls. Set it up and get you moving along, nice and good. Get you through that space. PapaLucy666@gmail.com is the email for all the personal effects. Such as you want to know about books, you have any questions, hit me up on that. 910-777-7708 is the number, or you gave me a 910-587-8430. So you got two numbers to hit me from. And tune in the mornings. Tune in on those. We're not morning anything. Tune in for that rising meditation and elevation via the. I do it between 9. Whenever time I leave the gym, I usually hop on Facebook, hop on Instagram, and it's also streaming on the GoDCoAlchemist YouTube channel, along on with the card of the day. That's something that I started today. The Spirit led me to do to start today. I started with the card of the day. Yesterday's was the Page of Wands to see what the days is. By the time you listen to this, and when you listen to this, it should be up. Speaking of God Occult Alchemist YouTube channel, last week we got into the aspects of my ear, my eye. I hate when my eye is itchy. Last week we got into the aspects of our Last week we got into the aspects of rigor mortis. This week I want to feel like getting into the labyrinth complex. The things that you built around your heart. In order to get to the path to the centerness of your heart, we're going to discuss that labyrinth, or the many walls that you put up in your life. So we can get into that with the esoteric understanding, breaking that down. God Occult Alchemist, Friday Night Lexus, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're listening to this, of course, on Tuesday, today being the only day that matters, Facebook Live, exclusive God Hour show, where we get into the aspects of the daily topic. We do the live readings, and especially for the ones that follow me on IG, after the God Hour show, we're doing the God Hour after show on IG. More readings, getting deeper, recapping that topic, getting deeper to the topics to go in there, so y'all can get some of it too. But stay tuned for the closeout, and thank you for all the support, for choosing the God Hour podcast. God Occult Alchemist LLC. All we doing is growing around here. Oh yeah, that's also. And if you want to do a build, I gotta to set up a couple builds and topics of discussion before we do the next, get into season 4. Yeah. Thank you for choosing the God Hour. I love you. You love us. Asha. Yeah. I don't know why I did the Trey Songz. Yeah, like I don't know why. But yeah. I also wanted to add something to living in the now based on the aspects of when you put conditions on things, especially like the aspect of love, or you put conditions on things for it to exist in your space. It goes both ways. If you put a value that exceeds what you're willing to put into yourself, that is two sides of that spectrum. You can be overly, let's say, protective, or you can be overly something to compensate for the things that you are not doing for yourself, to overcompensate or to overshadow the things that you don't want noticed. That's the deeper aspect behind that meaning. So you can overdo your job for the lack of having a home life. You can then, in the same aspect, overdo your family, you can overextend yourself. And this goes to the aspects of overreaching or what is that word? Over. I got it in the notes. We were talking about the aspect of balance. Overcommit. You can overcommit to sustain the reality. You have to stop overcommitting extending that already burnt out warranty called your existence. You want to be overly protective as a mother, overly protective as a girlfriend, overly protective as a boyfriend, all this overprotection. You're
you're taking yourself out of balance. You figure if you keep something out of balance in your life, whether consciously or unconsciously, keeping something out of imbalance always gives you a reason to leave. But it gives you a reason to escape. Overcompensating or overcommitting or being over the line. Remember, it's either underbalanced, overbalanced, or centered. So being over the balance, the amount that's needed for balancing, that means you over in your shit. Gives you a reason to stay in the constriction to need to escape. I need a night out. There's nothing wrong with needing a night out, but why do you need a night out? Remember, everything, once you start living in the now, everything's automatically programmed. Because you're taking responsibility of how you program your life. When you take that when you take that responsibility for your life, take that honesty for yourself, start building in transparency, start becoming comfortable in the discomfort so you can further expand and shed, then you won't need to plan it because it'll already be there waiting for you. That is a major key. You want things to be there for you automatically. There's no need to set a value system. There's no need to barter your time because you know if it don't meet it, that acceptance of what you're seeing, you're able to walk away. And that's called honesty. That's called transparency. That's called mastering yourself. That's called living in the now. That's called burning down those bridges of that attachment. That's the aspect of no longer building and forming your shit based on the terrors, the trauma, the shit that you live in it based on existence. That's your key. And you know, if you listening tonight, listening right now, because I know what I'm about to say next. If you listening right now, bright and early on this Tuesday, throughout your day, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we got the God Hour show going down, Facebook Live. Rock Holo Nijas is the link to follow, as well as at 8 p.m. maybe. I don't know. I might do another after show for Instagram. And before that, we got Meditate and Elevate. So there's no excuses other than the ones you set for yourself. I want to see you be fucking great. I want to see you be the fucking best. I want to see you exceed. So I want you to exceed and step further in the knowledge. So if it's something that is time for, we playing leapfrog in this, breaking this shit down. You playing leapfrog on the, as Bobby Hemmings said, we pissing on stars and shitting on planets. Let's do that shit. It's been another episode of the God Hour podcast. I appreciate your support. Become a monthly patron. The links is in the description. And I'll see y'all throughout the week. I love you. This is Papa Lucifer. Few of us are going to make it. And even few of us are going to step through. This message resonates with you. That means you're right on the way. I love you. We love us. Ashe.